All right, welcome back to Resilient Voices and Beyond. I'm so excited for today's episode. You guys know I've been calling out to talk to specific sectors and areas and expertise of individuals out there. And I'm excited for today. I have one of those individuals who work in one of those areas of expertise. But before we even get into all that, I would be remiss if I didn't take a moment to thank you guys for all your support. Not even just for me, but for the individuals who have came and been a part of the Resilient Voices and Beyond podcast, shared their story and their experience. You guys have been truly amazing and supporting their books, supporting their nonprofits, supporting their businesses, and supporting them in general. I've been hearing really great things about it. And I just thank you guys for giving me this platform, because without I could just be on here talking, without you guys listening, I wouldn't be here, So I just thank you guys for all that you guys do for me and for the people that come on here. So thank you so much for that. Um, if you have happened to stumble across this podcast, you're like, who is this person talking? His voice is a little bit high, but a little bit low at the same time. I don't know. My name is Michael D. Davis Thomas, aka MDDT Speaks. I spent approximately 11 years in the Michigan child welfare system. First half being on the juvenile justice side, there was a little short stint being a dual ward. If you don't know what a dual ward is, JJ and foster care at the same time. And then switched completely over to foster care until I aged out at 18, re-entered back in because I needed some help to 21 and got that extra support. Um, I started advocating at 15. So I've been doing this work and getting paid for it for a little bit over a decade. But I truly love this work. This is what I'm called to. I remember having the experience and having the thought of I didn't want to be another person who like the system's also awful. This is horrible. I wanted to be that person to like, okay, I had some bad experiences, but what am I going to do about it? And that's what has pushed me for this period of time, building this podcast and doing all this great and wonderful work, being invited to these tables to be here today. But you guys aren't here for me. You guys know I can talk. Um, you guys are here for my guests. So without further ado, I'm gonna have her introduce herself.
Hey, thank you, Michael. I am so excited to be here. Yeah, my name is Joan Ulsher. I am a court-appointed special advocate, also known as CASA. And so I work in the as a volunteer in the child welfare space, representing children's best interests in court when they are in the foster care system. And I'm also a child or author of a new book called Misplaced Childhood: A True Story of Resiliency and Child Advocacy. I am a retired veteran U.S. Army soldier and officer, and Christ follower, a DIY enthusiast, all around just a champion for children, somebody who just wants to make a difference. So I'm excited to be here today and have a conversation.
Definitely, definitely. So I was going over um your bio. And for y'all don't know, out there listening, I do get bios from people. It helps me understand and know some things. And just reading that you do DIY and you've made a dress, I believe. You
Oh, dressers, yeah,
dressers? I'm like,
yeah,
look, you got more skills than me. Like I love it.
yeah. We could talk about that story. That's kind of like it's a big part of how God showed me my purpose in serving children. But um, I guess like DIY, do it yourself, craftsman type stuff, that flipping houses and designing things and building projects and stuff. I enjoy that stuff. But I think it was instilled in me from watching my dad when I was a child. He was really skilled at doing that, and it was those brief moments when he was sober, and he was making repairs to our house, often from damage, perhaps from violent episodes, and I watched him do this, and I always thought he was a monster, but years later I realized, like, oh shoot, that was imprinted in me, and now I'm I'm doing these DIY things for kids. But so with that, I kind of leave you hanging. It's like, yeah, I have lived experiences of childhood abuse and the foster care system, and at the hands of my mom and my dad. But that was almost 40 years ago, and I'm just now really telling my story nationally, trying to make a difference for kids. And that was one of those things during the writing process that I discovered is like, wow, I thought my dad was truly a monster, but he somehow God showed me the way to watch him and have those DIY skills imprinted in my mind. And then years later, when I found myself advocating for children in foster care, just light bulb went off. I'm like, geez, I got these kids. Some of them are leaving care and going to independent living or getting adopted or going home. And we all were that kid at one day that had that black trash bag. I'm like, I was that kid too. No more black trash bags. I want to see a child or a teen or a young man or woman go to a forever home and have something that is uniquely designed and crafted for them. So I just started finding dilapidated dressers and making them really brand new, rebuilding them, restoring them, transforming them to a custom created work of art. So if it started out with a couple of young men that really like the San Antonio Spurs, the basketball team. So I made a couple dressers like that. And then, of course, Star Wars, Minecraft, Stranger Things, a lot of Disney princesses, and just the list kept going. So that is a huge part of my advocacy that is not directly tied to the requirements of a CASA advocate, but it's just something that I do on the side because I know that it brings joy to the kids that receive one of those gifts when they finally go to that forever home.
Definitely, definitely. You know, I like that you brought that up, because I think back to my experience, it brought me back to my experience of dealing with things with my own mom and my own dad. One thing I share with both of them is they both wear glasses. But my mom loved to read. And I find now it just popped in my head as you sharing that unique aspect. I read a lot. Like I
Yeah,
read
I do
a
too.
lot, and I remember watching her and mimicking her as a kid. Didn't know how to read, but mimicking her and wanting to do that, and I think that's one thing that, I held on to throughout my time in care. I think back to being in the different facilities that I was in, and I always read. That's how I became the advocate that I was. When they gave me the recipient rights thing, I'm over here. So you said, you
it,
know.
it gave you a connection too, I mean it's
Um,
important to have that, but I think that so far what we're talking about and the way this conversation is going, it's one thing to come out of the experiences we had.
yeah,
You had just, I mean, wow, 11 years, that in itself, most children don't make it out, and if they do, they become homeless or incarcerated within the first year of that transition to adulthood. But to share the resiliency that we have found in our lives out of the pain, out of the ashes, the
mhm,
uh, not focusing on what happened to us, but really catapulting those experiences into how we are using it today to
yeah,
help youth and to spread a message of hope, resiliency, faith, purpose. What you do, what I do as a CASA advocate, we're both advocates for children. We're just doing it in different ways, but we both have those experiences that really give us a guiding principle and a purpose deep in our heart to
mhm,
really, really, really just dedicate ourselves to children in need. And there's nothing more important to me than that. And then to be able to say like, yeah, my dad was a bad guy or whatnot, but I'm kind of proud of the fact of the things I learned from him. And you mentioned in your mom, I'm proud that my mom was she used to do like needlepoint and crocheting, and she's kind of artistic, and that probably bled into that DIY activity that I do as well because I paint these dressers by hand. Sometimes I use an old style projector to project images. Sometimes I have to freehand it, and people always say, "Wow, you're an artist," and I just go, "No, I'm not an artist. I'm just a craftsman." But we took something from our pasts You did, I did, and now look at the way we're using it to make an impact in our communities and the nation. So
Yeah.
I'm so honored to be here with you today, and I follow a lot of the work you do, and I'm impressed. I'm just so impressed, and I wish I've got to get all the young men that I work with, the teens that are trying to aspire to go to college or Job Corps or something, to listen to you, because I think that you just emanate that resilience that I'm trying to help them find as well. And you'll recall not too long ago, I was that same kid. People probably told us the right way to go, and I went the other way.
Definitely.
So, but anyway, with that, it's a good introduction.
Definitely. I truly appreciate that. I think I'm always scrolling sometimes, I try to sit as I've gotten older, I try to sit in my nothingness, do some mindless scrolling
I
sometimes,
love that.
you know. And I remember coming across this photographer artist who would take pictures of like ashes, forest fire, different things like that. And you just like one thing you wouldn't think is beautiful, And as you're sharing that, it's just like, I really had some really awful times. You had some really awful times. Many of us had some many awful times, but I'm a firm believer, I don't make no excuses for my parents or any of the abusers within my journey, but I do distinctly remember many things that have helped me be who I am, and that wasn't significantly contributing to the abuse, but beautiful things that helped me be the man that I am, such as the reading. I do a lot of grant reviewing, policy reviewing, helping write, different things, and that started from seeing my mom, and
Yeah,
different.
amen. That's awesome.
So I think about what you just said about that, and I just think about the beauty within the ashes, within the storm, our
Right.
individual lives. I want to bounce forward slash bounce back. I know in our prior conversation onto this recording, um you shared a little bit of me about that journey and connecting to your now. Um I kind of want to get a sense of prior to military to your now. Like what did that look like for you, and how did you make these different decisions? And what part has self-care, mental health, you know, building a family, building a community,
Yeah.
support, what how did those attributes, those different key things that you have now play a part? And when did they connect with you and build those bridges?
Wow, that's a lot of questions in one question. So many different ways I can respond. But I think to go back, I I didn't know when I was a child that my life was really much different than the outside world.
Mhm.
Inside our closed doors, behind that storm door in South Buffalo, I just assumed that as a family that was undergoing or in the midst of some domestic violence and then ultimately child abuse and a lot of alcoholism and dysfunction there, I thought that was normal. And because back in the day, in the 70s and the 80s, we didn't talk about that. And there wasn't a real awareness in the communities about how to serve children and families, and how to reach out and say that you need help. So I learned very early just to kind of, you know, save myself. I'd like to say that, out of four siblings or four of us, that we all kind of were united and tried to help one another to be strong. But there were times that we couldn't do that anymore. We tried to be reunited and fight back and get away and be one voice, but ultimately our voices were crushed when we were threatened or manipulated and needed to recant, or perhaps the authorities, who usually was the police in our circumstances. We didn't really know anything about like child protective services or any social workers or services organizations out there to help us. So we just went to the police all the time. And of course, the police, they lived in South Buffalo. They probably drank at the same bars my dad drank at, and they probably knew everybody, but somehow our voices were silent. So from a young age, I just just stuffed everything, just kept it inside and stuffed it. We didn't really tell anybody what was going on. And then uh, I would watch TV programs, and this is really going to date me, but the Brady Bunch, the Waltons, Eight is Enough. I even remember things like Family Affair and a few other ones, Leave It to Beaver, reruns on that one. But I would watch those shows and I would see that there were these parents, these fictional people, and these perfect families that just, I was like, oh, maybe that's the way life is supposed to be. I just assumed what was going on in my house, the beatings and the emotional abuse and the neglect and everything else that was going on was commonplace. I was too young to know any better. But by watching those TV shows, I at least started to daydream and think like, hey, maybe one day I'll have a parent like that. And so when I'm finally outside my element, I'm getting a little older and I'm off to high school and you start spreading your wings as you're an adolescent. Some people just kind of started paying attention to me, and it was a neighbor, and it was a teacher, and then ultimately in college and in the military, it was other leaders. But when somebody paid positive attention to me, maybe perhaps because I performed well in school, or I was also a bookworm too. I was really into Arthurian literature. I loved King Arthur and Camelot and all that might for right and all that. So like particularly English teachers really were like, wow, you really like this stuff. And I'm like, yeah. And so once they paid attention to me, I kind of absorbed that and thought, wow, I must be, okay. These people don't see me as a bad kid. They're actually treating me with kindness and respect. And that felt so good. And I felt like I was getting something that I wasn't getting at home. So that gave me hope. And then other things that I had to draw hope from were that I just wanted at that point to change my circumstances. I didn't want to be like my parents. I didn't want to be an alcoholic. I didn't want to live on the edge of poverty. I wanted to make something of myself and just get away, get out of my town and break free. And that is essentially what I did, is just applied myself in school. I wasn't a perfect student, but I did the best I could and joined the military and the reserves at first and went to college. And then, yeah, then fast forward 20-year career in the Army thinking, hey, that's my life. And then, no, that wasn't it. Had the family and had all that. In the military, we used to say something that if, Uncle Sam wanted you to have a spouse or a child, they would issue it to you, just like they issue you your uniform and your boots and stuff. But I didn't get my husband issued to me. He just kind of fell into my lap and we hit it off. And now we've been married, gosh, I think going on like 27 years. But that's extraordinary. And he knew very little of my past. And so when I ultimately kind of came to my knees with just depression and trauma revisiting itself from my childhood and from some experiences in the military, my world came crashing down. It was the old Jack in the Box. Stuff, 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 stuff. Crank the arm, crank the arm, crank the arm, and then poof, it explodes. And so I recognized I needed a higher power in my life. And that's when I turned to Jesus and recognized that he could be my project manager, that I didn't need to do my own DIY life anymore, that Jesus could do it for me. And so I got transformed through faith, and the shame just disappeared. And I was beginning to become more transparent and vulnerable and sharing my story at church and to the congregation and to others. And then God continued to open doors and show me the way. And it was my husband who discovered Child Advocate San Antonio, one of the CASA networks, one of the programs from across the country. And he volunteered first, and I immediately decided, must be my time too. And thus, that's how I ended up into CASA and child advocacy and recognizing that, wow, I had all this stuff from my past that now I can use it for something good. I no longer had to stuff it down inside anymore. I no longer had to keep it secret. I could expose the truth and be vulnerable and be transparent with people and show them that the grace of a loving God could transform anybody's life. And anybody then could make a difference in a child's life, just like some people did for me, just by being there, just by showing me some attention. And now I have the tools to know how to help children.
Really appreciate you sharing that. One of the key things that really stuck out to me is how you went through a military career. I still experiencing having all that in the back end of your mind. And it really speaks to, because I see it a lot. I see it a lot in, advocacy and working with other youth and other young adults, and mentorship. is kind of like that functional survival, you know.
Yes.
And it's, and it's, we always highlight the individuals who are showing that they're in crisis, you know, but there's a huge population of individuals who they may not, may mask very well, and they go through the motions, and then we don't hear about it until X amount of years later, when they have got to a place where life has slowed down for them. They have reached all the
Yeah.
degrees, all the accolades, all the different things. And next thing so I hate to say it, something has happened, or different things like that. And it's one of the things that I've tried my best to highlight in my own journey, but also in my advocacy is, that there's a lot of good people out here that is functioning and surviving through functionality, and it can be a default, a
Yeah. I,
default
I
that's
like that you said wear masks because you're right. A lot of us do. We're ashamed of what happened to us, and perhaps that as adults we look back and go, oh, we should have been stronger. Why didn't I do something? Why didn't I say something? It was my fault. I didn't help my siblings, or I should have been nicer to my parents. I should have been a better kid and whatnot. But I like that, and uh, I didn't ever think of looking at it that way as masks. When I joined the military, yeah, it was a way to get away. And actually, I just opened up to page 245 in my book because I want to read this part because this is kind of
Mhm.
important. I want to talk about this because it ties into exactly what you said. So this is later in my book. It's in a chapter called Regrets. During my career in the Army, soldiers were fashioned like carbon copy cutouts with green and brown camouflage patterns. You could not immediately identify their pasts by looking at them as they uniformly stood in a military formation. This was intentional. The Army wanted uniformity, not individuality. We did not know their stories. It was not until later in my life that I realized that as a society, we often look at children in foster care the same way. Society sometimes fails to invest the time to become informed. We look past the children, not seeing them. We cannot create meaningful change if we do not see the children and listen to them. And that, is it was so transformational for me in my journey and my healing process and my advocacy to understand that, yeah, how did I survive, almost 20 years in the military and not let people in? It's because I closed off and put on blinders. I closed off everything around me, and I was in an environment where we did that as a collective organization. I think of being a commander at times and standing out in front of a formation of my troops. They all look the same. They're all wearing the same uniform, dress right dress, crisp military haircuts, military physiques. Everybody looks the same. You could not tell where they came from, what their background was, if they had been in foster care, if they had struggled in life, if they had a speech impairment, even, or anything. They just all looked the same, and that's what the military wanted. And it wasn't until after the military when I realized, like, if I had only taken time to look closer at each individual as an individual and really develop those soldiers a little bit more personally and intentionally, I probably could have changed some more lives. Um, and there were some regrets, and that's why that's in this chapter. I don't want to kind of spoil the story on that, but there was a tragedy that had occurred in my early in my military career that really took me right back to my childhood, and it made me think of my brother and the loss that I had with him. So now I just really feel like I have to speak out and talk about this story. My brother did not get the chance to tell his story. When we got taken away in foster care, that was the last day I saw him alive. And now, almost 40 years later, I can talk about what happened to us because there are children today that are going through some similar circumstances and may not feel strong enough to say anything. And then also, how many times do you see it when you're scrolling and you see somebody found a puppy or a kitten and they need a
Yeah.
foster and this and that? And, I'm like, come on now. We got children that need attention and care. And I think that people just, as a society, they're just like, oh, the kids are going to get taken care of. They're not. They're not getting taken care of. But, people do step up for the dogs and the cats and the strays and the shelters. But we've got to do more for children, like we were. There was a time we were innocent and young and didn't know what the world was throwing at us, and we made it through the muck, and we're on the other side now. And if we can reach back into that muck and pull another child out, somebody who's maybe listening to this right now and maybe struggling, not really knowing their identity, not really knowing where they're going or if they have a purpose, I want them to see you as a success. I want them to see me as a success story, and I want them to see the others that you feature, so that they know that there is a light in otherwise dark system, and it doesn't have to be about the past. It can be about just the surviving instincts now.
Definitely,
And no
definitely.
more masks. We don't want to wear masks. We don't want to wear
Well,
camouflage uniforms. We don't want to wear masks. We just want to embrace each other as brothers and sisters in this broken world, and try to make our community stronger by making a difference in a child's life or their family's life, even before they get impacted by the child welfare system.
yeah, yeah. You took me a couple of different places in my mind, so my mind is
That's good. That's
not
good. That's all right.
fully multiple different ways, but it's this assumption of safety. I feel like society, I don't think it gives this, I don't think we give ourselves permission to really just assume that. I just feel like it's become a norm. It's become a norm.
So true.
And and it's not like anybody, it may be a select, I don't know the stats behind it, but when I really understand what childhood trauma is, or individuals who experience adverse,
The
experience,
adverse childhood experiences. Yeah.
right,
It's just,
that can be as little as losing a grandparent, changing schools, at a young age, these different things. And I'm like, well, almost everybody got something, so it seems as though at some time or factor, as we grow up, as we acclimate to what society wants, it becomes a norm, and it's socially okay for us to assume that one's problems, or this child, or this cat, in the essence, this cat is worth more than this baby, or this
we
teen.
need to we need to break that. And
You
I'll tell
know,
you, since you mentioned the childhood trauma and how it's not all the same, here's what I'd say about that. I say childhood trauma can look differently depending on the situation
yep.
and the individual, exactly as you just said. And generally, childhood trauma is when a child experiences, witnesses, or hears anything that's threatening or dangerous in their mind, in their situation. So
Mhm.
all trauma is not equal. Exactly what you said. And even though it was traumatic for one person, it might just be seen as typical to another. But that's where you're right. You hit on that. Society just says, this is normal. I know a kid that handled it just fine, or my family, handled it just fine. So therefore, everybody should be the same. And it's not. We just don't know what's going on inside of children's minds when they are the recipient of abuse or maybe neglect or bullying. I mean, my goodness, social media today, thank heavens it wasn't around when I was a youth, because I don't think that I could have handled a little more negativity coming my way, after what I was trying to deal with in my house, and try to be strong that way. And now kids are facing so much more.
Yeah.
And then, the drug crisis, the temptations to get out there and just
A
try
lot,
things that aren't healthy,
a lot of things are
period.
more accessible as well.
Yes, yes.
you
Yeah,
know, like,
in a way, growing up in the dark ages, for me, I'm a dinosaur now. I'm 55. I'm actually proud of that. I do pretty good for 55. I think it was all those early morning wake ups in the military and doing, my physical training. But now my life is behind me. I don't need to go back and worry and stress about what happened and how am I going to get by. I just feel so blessed that now I'm in a position as a child advocate, as a volunteer, with all kinds of great training from a national program and the guidance of my local child advocate San Antonio to impact children's lives and answer questions for them and be a voice for them when they don't know how to voice what's on their mind. If they can tell me something and then I can talk to the judge for them, or I can encourage them come to the behind the judge's chambers and talk to him in person. That's an opportunity I didn't have. And I mean, I remember talking to a judge one time about one experience, and he ordered therapy and it was awful. I don't remember anything else, but now if I can look back and use those experiences and go, I need to get this kid in front of the judge. He needs to talk. Maybe he won't talk to me, but maybe he'll talk to Your Honor, that experience. But yeah, we can't have this be the norm in society, and we just can't look away because we figure somebody else is handling it, and there are not enough advocates out
Yeah.
there. In my particular field, in CASA, in the court-appointed special advocate realm, there's about 939 programs across the country. Sounds like a lot, right? I mean, I can't even name how many cities there are in the country, but it's got to be in the thousands. So if there's only 939 centers out there serving the communities, and it's only 49 states and the District of Columbia, there's one state that's left out. We have a collection of over 97,000 volunteers. That sounds way wonderful. We've got the answer. Kids' needs are being met, but no. Even though the children in foster care, the numbers have dropped a little bit since 2016. When we were at a height of like over 500,000 kids or somewhere around that. We're kind of averaging about 391,000 or more children in care since 2021. But still, with only about 98,000 advocates, that means there's a lot of children who do not have an advocate. They don't have anybody to look out for them. And the saddest thing for me is when I go to, let's say, a residential treatment home, or even a foster home where there's a number of children there, and I get announced as, hey, let's just throw a name out there, and we'll say, Ricky, your casa is here. And then Ricky comes running in the door, yay, my casa's here. Let's go to Sonic. I want to get, a double cheeseburger. And another child will invariably come running up and grab my leg and say, can you be my casa too? And so heartbreaking because we're not serving every child in foster care. And every child needs to have somebody stand by them and be part of the collective team, because that's what it is out there. What you're doing is teamwork for your community, and what I'm doing in my community is teamwork alongside the child's attorney and the social workers, the CPS caseworker, any therapist, the CASA organization, the court. We are a team to try to help address the child and family's needs and get them the safest and permanent solution that they need. But dang, it just hurts me when I know there's not enough volunteers. And I really hope that people investigate and see if that's maybe a calling for them, if it's their purpose. And I'm beginning to hear more and more. There's folks like you and I that have these lived experiences, and we're now putting it to action, and we're doing something. So with the hundreds of thousands of kids that have walked through the child welfare system before you and I, they're still out there, maybe still waiting to have their heart and their mind open to advocacy. And maybe they might stumble across your podcast and hear your voice, my voice, or another one of your guest voice, and discover like, hey, I didn't know this. I need to do this. Because it took 40 years for me to even know that this program existed. And now I'm going to do it, for life, my second life.
Yeah. Staying right here because there's a couple things I want to circle back to, but I'm not gonna let my mind get off track. Um, you shared about the need for more casas.
Yeah.
So from what I've learned, from a bunch of people, there's a lot of people that they like, I don't know. I don't know another way to explain this other than how my mind is wanting to go with this. So hopefully I don't make nobody mad, but this is, my faith and my religion has taken me here. Um, there's a time where, I just want to get saved. I want to go, and I keep going to church. I keep going, but I don't feel like something's holding me back from committing, or making that push, making that final drive. And then one day, I don't know if it's a trigger word or key phrase, whatever. It's just, I feel like, okay, I'm called to, and a lot of people I feel like, out there waiting for that magic word, that key phrase, you know. My thing is, what I want to kind of do, like a little call to action right here in this space. While you sitting here waiting for that little, that magic word, that magic moment, that Disney experience or whatever, you know, just imagine how much time in that waiting, when you could have been offering some experience, some wisdom, some mentorship, some support, towards a young person.
But it's all in because you mentioned faith, and I'm a very faithful person too, and in God, I trust my life to God now, and know that I am here because of His grace and salvation. It brought this to my mind, and I just dug it off my desk. Proverbs 3, verses 5 and 6. This is not the exact wording, but this is the best of my recollection. Something about trusting in the Lord and not your own understanding of what your path is going to be, and submitting, because He's going to make that path available or known to you at the right time. And that's Proverbs. And again, Philippians 4, verse 13, I can do all things through Christ. Romans 8, verse 28, we're called for a purpose because of God's love for us. I mean, there's so many reasons out there why it's not up to us to
Mhm.
determine our destiny. That's already been written in the stars. That's God's blueprint for us. He knew us in our mother's womb before we were born. Even though I rejected that for years and years and years and didn't become a saved person until into my 40s. But the biggest thing is not being a victim, and finding the resilience and believing in that higher power. And if for you and me it's Christ, great. If for somebody else, another denomination, another faith, if they find
Mhm.
something that moves them and balances their world and puts them off on their true north, on their compass, then that's awesome. I got called for a purpose, and I had to give up the DIY life where I was trying to control my life and
Mhm.
orchestrate it and present a certain image and be a successful officer in the military. Yet I was in pain, and I had stuck things inside, and I hadn't shared my truth. And until I said, all right, I give it up. I'm going to let Jesus the carpenter be my carpenter, and He's going to take control of renovating my life and flipping my life. That's the way it's going to be. And I really had my eyes opened in 10 years ago to this philosophy, to this lifestyle, to this faith-driven purpose, a God-given purpose to serve children. I know that I did not go through the things that I went through as punishment. Those things happen because we live in a sinful world. But
Mhm.
albeit, I now know what to do with it because God loves me, and I'm going to love these children for Him, and I'm going to show them the way. Now, one thing I gotta say, because this has gotten off. I didn't expect we were going to talk a little bit about faith today, but um, let's talk about biases. So I want your audience to know, because there's probably some people that have had some experience with
Yeah.
CASA or Gal Advocate that have not been favorable. I want people to hear that we're individuals. I'm a deeply flawed individual. I'm a sinner. I have to give it up to God every day and say, give me another chance, Lord. I need to do better with my life and with my family. I try to do what's right. But we're human, and we're not robots, and we can make mistakes. And with that said, if anybody has been failed by a caseworker, a legal system, the foster care system, a foster family, an advocate, I hope one day that they find peace through forgiveness with that process. And I'm not saying everybody has to find that. I was very lucky that I was able to forgive my worst abusers before they died, um, and that was critical to my inner healing. I needed to do that, but with with this construction project of my life,
Mhm.
I had to put my tool belt down. I took that tool belt off and I just said, that's it, open up the windows of my soul and let that light in and break down those barriers and peel off the layers of peeling paint. I had a very unstable foundation, basically. We look at I look at my life as a house, and I tell that story, that transformation in my book as an analogy of flipping a house. God flipped my life, and every piece of my life, was just dilapidated and out of control, and it is because I was trying to do it my way. And once I gave that up and followed God's word, I finally have a path. And so I think that's why, like circling back to the dressers, I think that's why it was put on my heart so much to reach back into seeing that my dad wasn't meant to be a monster. He had these skills, this DIY, and I watched. And I was afraid too, because it's like, hey, give me that crescent wrench, give me that claw hammer. I had to learn, but I was afraid, I don't want to mess up and get in trouble. But I learned. And now my biological father and God my father showed me the way to take dilapidated, worn out dressers like I once was and see the future and the goodness and the glory in them, and then present that to a youth so that they can also feel what love I put into making that piece of art for them. So they know that they no longer have to be broken, dilapidated, torn down. They can be a beautiful work of art one day. And it just instilling that in the children that we work with is just vitally important. And I just want to apologize for any child out there who feels like they didn't get the advocacy that they needed. Again, we're human. I take this very personally. You can tell. I mean, you follow me and I follow you, and we know we're passionate about what we do. Is everybody that passionate? Perhaps not. Can I spark a change? That call to action that you were saying earlier, that's exactly what I say. I wrote this book so it can be a call to action. It's not just to inform people about the trauma I went through. It's really to tell people in the nation that kids are still going through stuff like this today. And for kids that have already gone through it, I want them to see that light at the end of the tunnel. And even advocates that are out there that say, I don't need to read that book because I already know what it's like to be an advocate, I want them to read it anyway and see it through the lens of a child that suffered that horrendous abuse and neglect and didn't have anybody there. And now, through the lens of the children I serve, with that awareness, using that lived experience to not have the things happen to them that happened to me. And so it's a mission. And yeah, call to action. And let's keep sounding the horn.
Definitely. I love it. I love it. I I think, just listening to what you just said there, I think back to my experience of aging out, getting into a program that allowed me 18 months of somewhat security, then having to find my own apartment on my own, failing at stability, you know, um, losing my car, losing my job,
Right. I remember you
and
telling me about that.
having that domino effect, having the eviction, sitting in my home without the lights on. And for me, at that point in time, because of what I was shown and the words I heard, I thought having those somewhat tangible things made me who I was in that moment.
Without
Yeah.
question.
And it wasn't until all that was wiped away. It hurt. It hurt for a good period of time. I was it wasn't until cycling through, trying to stay with friends, sleeping on the street, sleeping in within and vehicles, just multiple different cycles of different versions of homelessness, finding myself in this shelter. And we have like this place where you can get assistance with jobs. It's Michigan Works and stuff like that. Just going and working on my resume. My second day being at the shelter, working on my cover letter, printing it off, and just sitting outside and just deep in thought. And I'm just like, it got to be something more to this.
Yes. You know what? I
Yeah.
want to say something here because I know you aspire to get a master's and a PhD and eventually run for political office and all that. Where is the day where college or a university takes those experiences that you just talked about, how harsh and rough it was, that lived experience on the street and the homelessness and the fear and honestly, fear and anger about how things went for you. Where's the day where they just say, Michael, we're calling you up and we're going to give you that bachelor's or that master's in life skills for surviving your childhood. I mean, we hear about celebrities and people receiving these honorary degrees.
Mhm.
I think that the day is now where we need to look at those experiences that you just talked about because it is so valuable. I don't have all those
Mhm.
experiences. I mean, I think my story is much smaller than that. And each of us is so unique. Everybody you talk to, their experiences are so unique. Um, but yeah, we need to have people recognize how powerful that is. Well, I want to add something too. So I was named after Saint Joan of Arc.
Mm.
And I use this quote. I found this quote when I was writing my book because it just blew me away. But it just as you were speaking, because you were speaking of surviving and thriving in the future. And I open up a chapter called Thriving in my book with Joan of Arc's quote. It's called, I'm not afraid. I was born to do this, St. Joan of Arc. And I'm like, you know what? That is so true. I don't have to be afraid anymore. Everything that you just talked about, everything I talked about, what we disclose, very openly and candidly and humble ourselves and making ourselves vulnerable and open to criticism, even for some of the mistakes and things that happen to us. Um, we don't have to be afraid anymore. This is exactly where we're supposed to be. You're doing what you're doing. I'm doing what I'm doing because this is what the plan was. And we're
Mhm.
going to make a difference.
Man, yeah. Definitely, definitely. You know, as I say this, and then I want to switch gears and ask you just a couple more things. Um, I feel like for me, it was really unique. It was unique to find a moment. It's like, oh, this is what I want to do. Like what I do now, this podcast.
Yeah, and to make money at
You
it.
know,
I what I do is volunteer work. I don't ask for any remuneration in that because I've got a military retirement, but you're a young man. You need to make a future for yourself. And even my book, the royalties from my book, I pay 100% forward to Child Advocate San Antonio.
Mhm.
There are a lot of people out there that you're competing with for viewership and audiences on social media, and they're asking for money for themselves or for whatever, but they're really not advancing the cause for the right reasons. I do believe that you are advancing the cause for the right reasons, and you're able to make a living off of it because I think it's going to be useful to plant your roots and grow from there to grow to those educational aspirations and attainments and hopefully a political future where you can shape legislation in the states or the nation.
Yeah. And
Yeah, and more power to you.
I think like you and I think the work that we do is not just for self. And
Exactly.
that's
Yeah.
a different thing that I think about this platform. The end goal with this is to pass it on.
Yes.
That's the end goal. Like whether they want to continue it as resilient voices and beyond, or continue it as the nuts and bolts of it, but keeping the same theme and the healing that comes from it, the advocacy that comes from it, the uplifting
Yes. And,
that comes,
and again, making a
you know,
difference. Yeah.
making that right, right. That's the end goal for me. Um, all the different boards and different things that I sit on that I've been privileged to be on the table. The end goal for me is passing that to another youth. That
That's phenomenal.
I want them to take that seat. And that's how that's what it looks like for me. But I want to switch gears and ask you one question. And feel free to not answer this, but I know that there's a lot of young people um, who like we mentioned earlier, functioning through that survival mode that they're in. And they may listen to this and be like, maybe it's time for me, and maybe married, like yourself, you know. Do you have any advice to those young individuals who may have a spouse or anything like that, children? Um, any advice that you can offer to those individuals who may, and I just think about healing, you can't really stop life. You can't really, stop, being that wife or that husband or that mother or that father, you know, um, but you also got to take care of you.
Okay, so you mean like advice if they want to make a difference in the world, if they want to make a change maker, how do they do that if they've already got a family? Oh, wow. Yeah, for me, it just seems so intrinsic that we all need we need hobbies, an outlet. I would say that whatever anybody can give to a child, even if they've got a family of their own and got to dedicate all that time to them as well, whatever they give outside of that, whether it's maybe sending a postcard or a phone call or big brother, big sister, maybe a couple hours on a weekend or something, or CASA work like I do, um, that's just going to be one more thing that the child didn't have. So if somebody's got a heart for children who are hurting, don't hold back because you feel like, oh, that's not for me. I don't have the time. There's always something you can do. And something unique in the story that I write in my memoir. So my memoir is not like a typical child abuse book. I talk about that trauma to draw people in and get them to realize how uncomfortable the world is for many children. Many people tell me, hey, they start my book and they got to set it down for a minute because it's a lot and they feel bad for me. And I'm like, feel bad for me. It's a happy ending. Bad for the children out there that don't have anybody kind of looking in after them or looking out for them. So anybody who's out there and has children or family or commitments or work, there's still something they can do. And in the back of my book, even if somebody just picks it up at the local library or bookstore, I actually feature a number of people in my community that are no longer CASA advocates, but they do other things that benefit children and make a difference in their lives. One married couple, just got the community together on social media and raised $20,000 and renovated all the child family visitation spaces at the local Department of Family Protective Services. So when the court orders child visitation, it looked all detention like and jail like, and kids were having birthdays in there and seeing their parents, the only time they got to see them in that week or that month, and it was just ugly space. And these folks at the time, they were advocates. They just got the community together and said, we can do better. Look at you take your children to the dentist office and it's happy and it's kid friendly and it's fun and there's like animal experiences on the walls, with giraffes and different murals. So they did that at CPS so that kids would at least feel happier instead of sad and in like a jail setting. And then another man, he retired after a number of different careers in his life, and he spends his year in retirement now. He's quite older than me, but he from about February December he just makes toys for kids, and then he donates them to nonprofits to make sure that a child is going to get a toy for Christmas. And then a friend of his helps add some beautiful accoutrements to him as well. If he made a sailboat, she might make the sail, and sew that on. And then there's another woman who just saw a need for the indignity of children in foster care to always be treated, or not always, but most of the time get treated as like second class citizens. You're in a family and maybe there's some biological kids and they get new toys or more toys at Christmas, and then the foster children maybe get just one or two or hand-me-downs, or it's just not treated as equals. And so this lady decided to start a nonprofit in her garage to provide brand new clothing to homeless youth and children in foster care and children in need and in poverty. And so these are people that don't advocate anymore, but they're doing something different. They're doing something outside the box, and they're finding time balancing their families. Some of them are grandparents with grandchildren and children of their own and pets, and they've either started a business or just done a little hobby. And so I think my advice for anybody out there who thinks that there is something in their heart that speaks to this and they just keep putting it off because they don't think they have the time, explore different ways. Even people just listening to your podcast and sharing the message on their social media is going to reach someone. If you think for every 100 or 1,000 people that hear the same message over and over, how many are going to fall through that funnel and go, "Yep, that's for me." I mean, I speak about Casa all the time. I'm sure with many of my friends, they're just kind of like, "For real? Again?" Like, it's not for me. And I'm like, but there's other things you can do. Share the message, open your wallet, donate, sew some quilts for the babies that are in the hospital and the little bonnets and stuff. When we have the preemies that are born maybe addicted to drugs, make them cute little bonnets and hospital newborn clothes. I mean, they're just wow. I mean, the sky's the limit. It just, I think it just defies getting outside of our comfort zone and realizing that you just got to stop saying, I can't do it because I have family, and just say, I can make a difference. How? And don't try to measure yourself against what somebody else is doing, because whatever you give is going to be something that child did not have the day prior, and they're going to treasure it. And I treasured those moments in my life, and I think that's how I got shaped to the person I am today. Little people did little things for me, and they weren't even aware they were doing it for me, but it makes a difference.
I truly appreciate you taking this time out to speak with me. It's been a honor and a privilege, as much as you gave me my flowers, I have to give you yours back. You've done so much, through even writing your book to the work you've done and even helping others. I truly appreciate it. It's monumental work, and you can truly see and hear that, this is something that you do out of the love and passion in your heart. It's very genuine, it's very pure. Um, and I'm honored, I'm honored. I've learned a lot, through you sharing your experience, and even in reading your book, which I appreciate it. It's in my I have like a little bookshelf that I've collected through the years, with other individuals with lived experience. And then I've also made another one. So this is dedicated to just people with lived experience that I know or
Yeah.
stuff like that. But I have
Yeah,
one
I got a lot of them on the shelf behind me.
I have one for like the stakeholders too, because there's a lot of people, that are allies. They don't have
Yes.
the lived experience, but they're allies and they write books as well. So I've created another shelf, for some of those. I've interviewed a couple people who are allies and supporting, the advocacy surrounding, So
I
I just
think it's important to share those stories, to spread those voices. Those all of them are resilient voices, and we're each going to tell a message in a different way. And me, I know this is the first time, like I said, that lens of a child who had been in foster care without an advocate is now telling that story and walking you through the process in the book of what it feels like to become an advocate. And as I learn what advocacy is, and I explore those memories of, wait a second, rights. I didn't know I had rights, So I take people by the hand through that CASA training experience, and then selecting a case and working with children and trying to relate to them. And I really downplay the children's stories because they've all signed releases, but I do try to protect their confidentiality, but yet still want to share the just kind of the feeling of what it is like to be an advocate. But we're gonna grow more resilience by everybody who reads those stories and listens to messages like this today.
definitely. Well, I only got one more thing for you. And how can people get connected with you? How can people get your book? How can people follow the work that you're doing?
Well, you'll probably have my links in your description, either on your social media account or your YouTube channel. But I have a website. It's joanulsher.com. But if that's difficult for people to remember, just remember my book, Misplaced Childhood. If somebody Googles Misplaced Childhood, they'll likely come across Misplaced Childhood book. by Joan Ulsher, Ulsher. And I'm also on Instagram at Joan_Ulsher, Ulsher. And so those are probably the best ways. And they can email me directly through my publisher on my website. So please reach out to me. I want to hear
Thankfully,
from you. And
had a minor connection issue there, but
yeah, I see you're a little frozen right now.
yeah. Had a little minor connection issue there, but it's okay. It's okay.
Yeah, yeah. But I just want, yeah, if people reach out to me through my website, they can email me through the publisher there. And I'm actually, I've got a really nice, I think it's 10 question kind of like a reflections and discussion for book clubs. So I've been meeting with some book clubs. I've got three coming up this week. And if somebody has a local book club and they want to pick up my book as part of that project and then reach out to me by email, they can schedule me for kind of like a virtual appearance like this. No charge. I just want to keep spreading the mission and answering people's questions and seeing how we can help unify this broken world.
Definitely. It's truly been an honor and a privilege. I can't stop saying that enough,
Your
thank
time.
you. Thank you so much. I know that you're a fairly busy woman and you're doing wonderful, great work, so thank you for taking the time out to be in conversation with me.
It's
uh
been my pleasure.
definitely. As I get ready to end, you guys, man, thank you again for your continued support, all that you guys do. I know that we kind of touched on some things that maybe can be potentially triggering. I just ask wherever you are, whenever you are, as you come to the end of this episode, as I'm speaking now, you take some time, do a little bit of mindfulness breathing, exercises, get back to baseline before you enter that next element of whatever you're doing in your life. If there's something here that you're like, oh man, that really rings to my life, I think I want to start a journey of working through some things and you don't know where to start, my email is attached to mostly all of the different platforms. I'm more than willing to help connect you, provide you with some advice. If I don't know, I know a lot of people. I don't think this is too much to exaggerate, but I feel like I know a lived experience person in all 50 states. I'm positive I probably do, or I'm
That's
connected with someone on
amazing.
my LinkedIn. So like I'm positive if I were to like reach out, I could find you the resources, and I'd be more than willing, even if it's just a conversation, because I know sometimes we just need those conversations, those conversations that just validate what we're going through, validate what we're feeling. I'm more than willing to have that and be in that space with you. Going
Yep.
forward, I know that it is cold and flu season. Please take care of yourself out there. I'm seeing a lot of people get sick, and I don't want us to drop our guard. These viruses are getting a little bit stronger. Please be safe out there. Get your sanitizer, get your mask. If you need gloves, get your gloves too. Make sure you got your antibacterial soap at home, whatever you need, because by taking care of you, you take care of so many others. Um, and understand that, we're a village. We're a village. There's a lot of people suffering in silence. This has been a continual message that I want to uplift, as we see, suicide rates and depression, continue to raise and different things like that, just check on somebody you haven't in a while. Send them a message. I'm not telling you to check on somebody that you're at odds with. It's not healthy, you know. Please protect your mental health and your self-care, but just check on somebody, whether it's a mom, dad, sister, brother, whatever, cousin, friend, that you just haven't had the time or the space. Because I know I do. There's a lot of people, they be getting on me like, Michael, I haven't heard from you. And look, between work, this, I forget how many people I'm connected to sometimes, but I love y'all all the same. But this has been episode 119 of Resilient Voices and Beyond, episode 30 of season 3. I'm still on the road to getting 50 episodes. I'm committed to getting that 50 before I end. Um, Help me reach it. If you are a person that feel that um, you're interested or you're ready to share your story, let's meet, let's talk, let's have you on. I also want to, recant that call to action. There's many organizations and different factions of CASA that needs your help. You may be right down the street from one. And there's a lot of youth out there that needs you, and there's many different ways that we spoke about that you can support. It's not always being that advocate. Maybe you could be a person that can do something one time a year, 2 times a year. I don't know, many foster homes, they need tutors. I mean, you may be extremely good at math. Maybe you could just like, hey, I could just help you with this algebra. I don't know, but there is a need out there, So for everyone listening, I just ask that you look within yourself and look within your heart and see what you can do, this year. This year, 2024. I'm not gonna demand too much of anybody else. Maybe after 2024, you might be like, I really want to do this for a little bit more. But for 2024, look and see what you can do. Um, Outside of that, this has been Resilient Voices and Beyond, episode 30 of season 3. Man, we chipping away. I hope that you guys have a good morning, good night, good whenever you're listening to this. Talk to you guys soon.